Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be in the company of these lovely ladies. I come from the African Union. The chairperson ought to have been here herself, but we are so torn apart and so much to do. In fact, this morning also, I had to open another event before I came here, and it's a little bit distance. They are far apart. So we have to be sarcastic people also. It's not enough to be the commissioner for economic, but you must also be a sarcastic person and juggle. You know how to throw 20 balls or eggs in the air without breaking them. I would really thank Africa Invest very much for organizing this event, and to say that African Union, we were so happy that this session, UNGA 70, is going to adopt formally Sustainable Development Goals or post-2015 development agenda, because we contributed tremendously. Africa was the only region of the world that contributed towards the work of the open working group with well-articulated, comprehensive contribution in the form of what we call CAP, African Common Position on post-2015 development agenda. And SDGs, the 17 goals, reflect very much what is in that CAP, the Green Book, which Africa contributed to development in the world. Meantime, we have our own, we have a vessel or a vehicle that is ready to take these sustainable development goals forward on the African continent. And that is Agenda 2063, which is based again on the contribution of stakeholders, a wide spectrum of stakeholders. It has about 20 goals. So we see SDGs as a subset of Agenda 2063. The whole objective, you know, everybody is praising Africa. Africa, you know, a decade ago it was 2%, then it became 4%, now it's 5%, is the highest average. But we are not flattered by this, because we know that to transform Africa from where it is now, we need about 7% growth plus, you know, either 7% or higher in real terms to really make the difference. Now we come to how are we going to go about that? By transforming the economy. We would like to go into infrastructure development, infrastructure in this case in its broadest context. You know, physical infrastructure, soft infrastructure, including communications and others, but also transforming agriculture, accelerating industrialization, particularly manufacturing. UNIDO still says manufacturing is still the greatest generator of employment. Then we go into developmental services to make sure that the services are there. Integration will be accelerated, is being accelerated, in fact, already with the tripartite agreement between COMESA, SADC, and East African Community. We are moving towards continental free trade area. So we have to improve productive capacities. We have to enhance our competitiveness so that we can join international supply chains. And for that, we will need investment. Now, Africa, we said, is open for business. We are really ready for investors. I remember being in Sweden at one time when I was still in Geneva as an ambassador there. I was chairing a committee which was going to raise funds for what we call Enhanced Integrated Framework for the least developed countries. And because I was the chair of the board, my minister was there. The two ministers were there addressing the press conference. And one of the journalists said, you know, here in Scandinavia, we are very happy, we're in Stockholm. And we were successful. We raised about 108 million that day, but eventually it was 225. For least developed countries, that made the difference. We said, you know, we are not happy with what China is doing in Africa. And the Swedish minister said, no, to my minister, don't answer that question, I will answer it. And I will answer it with another question. Let me ask you, who stopped Scandinavian and European and OECD investment from going to Africa. If you think the Chinese are having such a good time in Africa, why don't you also go and have that good time? And indeed, that's the question we are asking. Who is preventing investors from going to Africa? Because we are saying we are open for business. Investors are invited. And a lot of investors find that the atmosphere, the competitiveness has reached a point that really the rate of returns are very high and is the growth point in the world today. Now that brings us to women. You know that this is African Union's year of empowerment, women empowerment. And I'm coordinating that within the, you may be surprised, a man coordinating women empowerment, but we are doing it, and we want to show results at the end of this year. Not just talk. Talk is enough. We want tangible results, really. It's time to move on. And I have to tell you that is for very selfish reasons. Is to make sure that we make use of all human resources and all talents that the continent can marshal, which are at the disposal. So you cannot exclude more than 50% of the population and say you are using your resources. We think our women are talented. We think that they have a lot of energy, and we would like to engage them. But some of the statistics which my chairperson likes to quote is that they found that when women earn income, women on average use 70% of their income on the family, compared to 30% men. Men only use 30% of their income on the family, on average. So for socio-economic development, it's good to invest in women, to invest in and with women. So women economic engagement is very important, and we would like investors to really take women along. Look at Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, which works among women. No collateral needed, but default rate is minimal. It has been very successful, so women are also dependable. So investing in women is very gainful. So I want to be clear that it's for selfish reasons. It's not because we like women, but I love women.
If we could.
But yeah, I'm concluding. Actually, that's why I'm rounding up. Actually, no, it's because it's practical. If what we want is that 7% plus in real terms of growth, then we have to engage women. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, that is terrific. Let's say hooray for women in Africa. And before you came, our advisor here, Donna, had shared with us some of the best practices in her firm managing $6 billion of funds, of using benchmarks that show that women managers really perform, in fact, in many cases outperform the male managed firms, as well as the importance of having databases on female managers. And so this, when you talk about the AU pursuing concrete steps, what we're trying to do here is to brainstorm, as you know, ahead of the AU Presidential Summit in January 2016. So I'm wondering if we progress to our next panelist, and if she can share with us some ideas as we try and brainstorm how we can have the precise steps that the AU can follow.
I'm really very impressed by the testimony I've had here. This is what we are hoping for. This is what we think should be happening. And I like it when you say yesterday, because we ought to have started way back. So programs such as this, are the, down to earth, how to do it, how to do it. Because we have been talking about these things, but I really feel, and we feel at African Union, that there's been enough talk. What we have to do now is delivery. We should show progress. So I'm impressed by what I have heard here about how to go about really engaging women in economic activities, particularly in finance. I think my fellow panelists here are mainly from finance, but also in other spheres of entrepreneurship. So I can only cheer and hope that that can permeate throughout the continent. And I want to say, when we say 2015 is the year of empowerment, it doesn't mean that come December 31st, it's fireworks and we say it's behind us. No, it's the launching year. It means from 2015 onwards, until we achieve the objectives, women empowerment it's on. In fact, we ought to accelerate as time goes. Thank you, moderator.
But if I could try and tie just a global point from our first session to this one. Internships, university courses. We talked about, in Addis Ababa, action agenda, that, and, very riveting, blended finance. But how do you do it? What are the models? Who does what? How many African universities have finance courses in project finance? We couldn't, as the Business Steering Committee for FFD, we tried to get the concept of project finance into that document. It did not happen. But yet, that is the fundamental financial principle for unlocking capital for energy, water, sanitation, and the like. So that would be something, with your permission, we would love to suggest be on the presidential summit in January 2016. Are you interested in your advisors fleshing out some points for that?
Yeah, I have these advisors and more. Even at
you don't want more.
no, these advisors and more. Because those ideas about how to do it, it's really what we would like to hear so that we move forward.
Well, this is what
so all these inputs are welcome.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll move to Q&A. We just, we're a little bit, are there any comments, questions, observations? Yes, please, identify yourself.
Yes, good morning. My name is Mothae, and I'm from Cote d'Ivoire's Investment Promotion Agency. I wanted to congratulate all the women there for your testimony, and certainly your example are very eloquent in themselves and give us a lot of hope. This is more a comment than a question. I think since listening to the first panel and here again the second one, we've been talking about partnership, public and the private, in the course of transforming Africa. And I think I share a little bit of the same experience of the previous speaker, sister from Senegal, with my experience in the US and returning recently into Cote d'Ivoire. Here we are talking about how to empower women. And indeed in Africa, you will realize that first it starts with education. None of you would have been up there if we haven't, you haven't been to school. So, that's the first thing for me. In Africa, you still have government. Cote d'Ivoire recently made, this was actually a law where you're required to be sent to school. I mean, it was very amazing for me. I didn't know it wasn't that way before. But the point is, young girls are not going to school. So how do you end up in a panel if you haven't been given the chance or the tool? So, and the second thing is, I think there is, I heard Donna, I believe, I heard her say, how the Common Retirement Fund in New York State, that I contributed to, by the way, was able to set aside some portion of its capital in terms of investment in women-run organization. That is absolutely, that's the key. So how now, for instance, some of the investment that your firms or related companies make in Africa, are there any conditions put on them, requiring them to invest or to partner with government that purposefully set aside or make women's achievement goal as priority? I think that's very, very important, that we have to, at every single corner, to think about Africa differently. It's not the same model that you see here. It will not work. It has to be something that is not only indigenous to Africa, but also it has to be taught from within. Ask Africans themselves, you know, this whole, somebody talked about earlier, it's not the technology, it's a mobile-only environment. That is so true. So anyway, I said it was just a way of comment. I think it's important that this conversation really, you have a wonderful, wonderful opportunity here in the US because of what the Constitution and what the country afforded you with. So now the question is, how do you pay that back forward? Or how do you literally, you know, use that platform and say, okay, government, this is what we do here in the US. We want to empower our sisters in Africa. What can you do?
Sure. Okay, so I have a specific suggestion about what you just said. So it's a great thing to be the client, right? So the African Union is made up of heads of state of all the African countries, and so let's just pick a country. If the president of Senegal says that all of the Senegalese capital pools, so all of the Senegalese public pension plans, the Social Security, National Investment Trust of Senegal, if there's a sovereign wealth fund of Senegal, if all of these institutions exist, they now must require their outside investment managers, as a condition of managing assets, to have an intern. You know, something as simple as that. And because the Social Security National Investment Trust of Senegal has, I don't know, $100 billion in assets, I know it's not that much, but just pick a number, and there are all these money managers all over the world that want to manage those assets, they will know in the RFP, in the request for proposal, that as a condition of you gathering these, getting assets from us, you must hire, you know, for an internship program or whatever it is, you must hire, you must engage with a local Senegalese. If you're the client, you can require that. And if the manager wants to manage the money, then that's what they'll do. And I assure you, they'll be happy to do that. And so that's a way that these programs that exist here can export themselves across the continent. Just a thought.
And if I may just add, I think what that requires is the willingness on the part of the heads of state,
yes,
to actually believe in this type of initiative and to encourage it and to push it down to the agencies and the pension funds within the country. Without that, I think it will be difficult to even talk about an initiative that the individual organizations or entities will adopt.
And isn't this not any different than, say, for example, the whole BOT, build, operate, transfer, where in order to do this, the company has to hire local employees and they have to learn, and you know, capacity building is a part of the actual project. It's the same type of concept, but just applied to the world of finance.
And just to build on that idea and to pick up on your point about partnerships, and obviously my focus is very much in the technology and innovation space. There are quite a number of really great organizations that are trying to crack this nut around getting women and people of color more engaged in technology. Digital Undivided, for example, who is run by an amazing woman, Catherine Finney, her sole mission in life is empowering female entrepreneurs of color in the tech space. So there's quite a lot that we can learn from her and take to Africa to do similar things there. And I'm sure there are folks on the ground already doing that as well, but I think that is a great sort of partnership opportunity. There are organizations like Black Girls Code, for example. You talk about how do you train these girls, right, getting them in school and learning. Maybe it's not a traditional school in the way that we've thought about it. Maybe it's a community-based program that teaches them the code. And then they can build their own businesses, right? And they're not employed by anyone but themselves. And so I think that is a real exciting opportunity too, because technology sort of opens up the world and develop in a way that I don't think I've seen before.
On that note, we are running a little bit late. So if there are other people that have comments, I encourage you to speak to the people on the panel. But please join me in thanking everyone. And I think we've really been successful. You asked for specific points. I hope you feel that you have some ammunition to go home with. So thank you. If we could just take 10
Doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.